Broken Fathers podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal advice. If you are going through the family law court process, particularly as a father, then this podcast may be relevant to what you may experience. Some things we discuss in these episodes may be triggering, and if you suffer from any form of mental health related conditions or subject to domestic or family violence and need any assistance, then please call 1-800-RESPECT and Lifeline. The views and experiences discussed by people on our show are not necessarily the views and opinions of Broken Fathers podcast or their guest speakers. We strongly advise you seek your own independent legal and professional advice, as the Broken Fathers podcast will not be liable, answerable, or accountable for any loss or damage or litigation resulting from discussions on our platform. Right, this podcast is now in session. Hold on, guys. The judge is running late to court. So whilst we wait, I'd like to take this moment to acknowledge our platinum sponsor, Straight Up Construction. At Straight Up Construction, they take pride in delivering high-end work across every trade. From new builds to renovations, no job is too big or too small. Director Luke Miller and his dedicated team tackle every project with integrity, hard work, honesty, and a commitment to delivering superior quality results every time. Straight Up Construction is built on the belief that strong foundations matter just as much in the bones of a home as they do in the heart of one. Families should stand strong, and every loving parent should maintain their right to be a part of their children's lives. Straight Up Construction believes that in true Aussie spirit, everyone deserves a fair go. That's why we're proud to have Straight Up Construction as our platinum sponsor. With their support, we continue to produce the Broken Fathers podcast and shine a light on the struggles of men who have been let down by the system. Good afternoon, Broken Fathers listeners. Welcome to another episode of the Broken Fathers podcast. On today's episode, we're changing it up. One, I've shaved my beard off, so this is the first episode with a clean shaven face. And two, I'm joined with a solicitor. She is from Fedorov Family Lawyers, and she specialises in high-risk domestic violence and complex parenting matters. She joins me here today. I will refer to her as Kate. Welcome, and thanks for coming.
Thank you, Percy.
That's all good. First of all, before we dive into the family court system and other matters, DV, etc., parenting matters, just for myself and all the listeners at home, I always like to start from day one, get to know a little bit about our guests, like where were you born, where you grew up, and what life was like for Kate.
So I was born in Canberra.
Yep.
My father was a barrister.
Okay.
And then later on in life, I had a stepfather who was also a lawyer. And so the legal world has been a part of my life from my earliest childhood memories.
Okay, nice. So it runs in the family.
I think so. I didn't have much choice in that matter. I think I was pretty much brainwashed into being a lawyer.
That's right. Just for the listeners at home, if you are watching via YouTube, the video is just on me today. We are not having the video on our guest, and in case you were wondering. But sorry, back to you, Kate.
So my dad was a barrister, and as a child, my dad used to take me to court with him.
Oh, wow.
And in those days, those were the days where barristers would be in the medieval wig and the big black gown. And
yeah,
he later moved to Sydney, and he would take me to the old courts there. And he unusually used to take me to prison with him. And so my father, from my youngest age and throughout his life, he's counselled prisoners as well.
Okay.
And he used to take me to Goulburn Jail even as a child.
Oh, wow.
And his heart was always to be a counsellor of men and help to uplift men and to just be an ear to support around him.
You wouldn't be able to do that today, take your child to court, would you?
So, be able to. And so for me, I very much grew up feeling very comfortable in a courtroom.
Yeah, good point. What was Canberra like growing up in cold?
So very cold. I'm a skier.
Oh, I don't like the cold.
That's probably the only thing that I do miss about Canberra is just being close to the snowfields, and I have a great deal of friends there and family.
What do you have siblings?
I do. I have a sister.
Yep.
And she lives
still in Canberra
nearby with me.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
In Queensland.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what about your household growing up? Like mum and dad? Like your mum?
So my mum is a nurse.
Yep.
She's a retired nurse. And then my parents did divorce at quite a young age.
Okay.
Which has had quite a big impact in my chosen pathway as a lawyer.
Yeah,
So I was 6 years old when my parents divorced,
Okay.
and then they remarried shortly after.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they separated for how long?
So, they only separated, both, they were separated for around 6 months.
Yep.
They found their lifetime partner.
Oh,
Been happily married since.
Okay.
In fact, I have 2 fathers and 2 mothers.
okay.
That way.
What was the separation like for your mum and dad? Was it amicable or?
Far from.
Far
It was
from.
extremely hostile.
Yeah, okay.
And so I feel that that has helped shape me as a lawyer in respect to the fact that I have a great love of children.
That's good, yeah.
I see my role as protecting them, and I have them at the centre of my mind in every matter that I'm working on,
Yeah.
because I've seen the impact that that can have upon children.
Yeah.
And so I was fortunate to grow up with a very strong mind and strong mental health. And with respect, I've taken after my father, whereas my sister has struggled greatly in life with respect to the impact that the divorce has had. And so she's literally a daily reminder of me of my obligation to try to protect children as much as I can
Okay.
in my capacity.
Did your parents fight over you and your sister at all? Was there fighting over the kids?
It was completely around the children.
Yeah.
There was finances involved, but back then, unfortunately, we didn't have the actual, we didn't have a lot of knowledge about the impact of divorce on children back then.
Yeah.
It was quite a new thing. And back then, the family court was very much a fault-based system. So if you can imagine how hostile it is today, imagine a fault-based system.
Yeah, okay.
And there was little knowledge about the impact that separation and divorce had upon children. And so from my experience of divorce, just as children, we were very much overlooked in that regard. You're just sort of expected to be seen and not heard and just adapt to all of those changes. And for me, I was fortunate in that I have a very strong mindset.
Yep.
Whereas my sister didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it had a pretty big impact on both of you, but mainly more on your sister?
Oh, very much so. And I have a real passion for fathers in that respect, because we have and continue to have an extremely close relationship with our biological father.
Okay.
Like, I consider him my mentor and my best friend. We talk weekly.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so nothing could actually sever that relationship ultimately.
Yeah.
And it made me realise that pretty much every single time in family court, the people who suffer the most are the children. And they don't have the emotional maturity to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
And so in all of my matters, it's essential for me to make sure that the children are getting appropriate child support from a child psychologist or ultimately a psychiatrist.
Yep.
And to remind both parties about the impact that their dispute's having on their children.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking, did your mum try and withhold you from seeing your father?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that actually continues today.
Oh, wow.
It's never actually stopped for her.
Wow.
But in her generation, there wasn't a lot known about psychology. Like, she's a child of the Second World War, and she's very set in her own ways.
Yeah, okay.
Even to date, she does struggle with having to share our relationship with our biological father.
Do you still have a good relationship with your mum?
Oh, yeah, we're extremely close.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so ultimately for me, I chose to love both my parents, but it's something I've had to manage throughout.
Yeah, which wouldn't be easy.
Which is a bit tiring at times.
Yeah.
Disputes.
How long did that sort of battle go for? Did you go to court, your mum and your dad?
So it did go all the way through court.
Yeah.
And it was a very bitter divorce.
Yeah, okay.
And so we witnessed the impact that had on my father as well.
Yeah.
Who was a barrister at the time. And then ultimately he left Australia.
Okay.
And he started up a division with the United Nations in Vienna.
Oh, wow.
And so he was the head of crime, corruption and narcotics.
Oh, wow.
And I was fortunate enough to live with him as a teenager.
Wow.
So he then took me into the United Nations, and I had exposure to that as well. So I think I was born with a sense of justice as a result of my father, and I'm forever grateful for that.
So how old were you then when you went to Vienna?
So I moved to Vienna at 15 years old.
Wow.
And I finished my schooling at an American school,
What was that like?
and spoke German. Well, I was the vice captain of the school and I loved it. I really loved being there. It was really amazing time, and I got to meet, it's given me the opportunity to have all sorts of different walks in life.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I have the love of clients that I do. In general, I love people. I'm a people person.
Yeah, that's good.
And I'm grateful to experience a whole different range of walks of life in my lifetime.
So between the breakup and leading up to, you were 6 when your mum and dad broke up,
Yeah.
and then you were 15 when you went to Vienna.
Yes.
Well, can you remember what life was like between 6 and 15?
Yes.
Did you live with mum?
So I lived with my mother and my stepfather, who was also a lawyer.
Okay.
And he basically has always referred to me, myself and my sister, as his daughter.
Yep.
And we now refer to him as dad. He's actually been a dad. He's had an active role throughout our entire life from childhood.
Yep.
And so I'm so fortunate to have had that.
Yeah, okay.
It was extremely hostile between my mother and father for all of those years growing up. And so I ultimately went to boarding school in a way to try and remove myself.
Escape it.
And that was suggested by my school. And so I did go to boarding school first and then lived with my dad and had a wonderful time.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. And your sister stayed in...
So my sister stayed in Canberra, and I think that had a huge impact upon her.
Hey guys, just a quick shout out to our gold sponsors. MCH Industries are a mining maintenance specialist company supplying solutions to the coal mining industry in the Bowen Basin and regional New South Wales. They supply superintendents, supervisors, leading hands, diesel fitters, tyre fitters, auto electricians, HV electricians, and trade assistants to assist. The mining one-stop shop for mechanical trades. MCH Industries are always looking for good blokes to jump on the team, so check out their Instagram for more details. And are you looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? There's only one name that's been leading the way for over 123 years, Ray White. Ray White isn't just another real estate brand. It's a family business built on ambition, trust, and leadership. Today, it stands as the largest real estate group in Australasia, connecting people with homes and investments across the country. Whether you're a first-time buyer, a seasoned investor, or looking for that perfect home, Ray White is committed to delivering authentic, local expertise. Because real estate isn't just about properties, it's about people, communities, and futures. And when it comes to trusted leadership, meet Alex Ilyan, an ex-Army veteran turned dedicated real estate agent. Alex knows what it means to serve, to strategize, and to get the job done. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, or just have questions, Alex is here to guide you every step of the way, servicing the Geelong, Bellarine, and Surf Coast areas. Ray White, the name you can trust in real estate. And your mum and dad still don't see eye to eye today?
No, so my father has always reached out an olive branch to my mother, but I think that she just goes through her ups and downs, and I don't think she's ever really recovered from that.
Can you remember why they broke up? Did it just fizzle out, or?
I think that my father was a workaholic.
Yeah, okay.
So he didn't have the maturity to understand that at the time. And so my mum was the primary breadwinner. She actually typed all of my father's assignments at university.
Oh, really?
All of them.
Oh, wow.
Type. And she was a nurse in emergency. And so she would be working night shifts to help support my sister and I with very young babies. And then I think ultimately he got a scholarship to Harvard and wanted to continue study. But I think that my parents did marry probably too young.
Yeah.
And they just hadn't really figured out who would be a suitable partner. They're both very beautiful, but I don't think their personalities were quite matched. But they're complete opposites. But the next time round, it's fortunate that they did pick a really good match themselves.
And they're both still with those same partners today?
Yes. So okay. For many, a very long time. And
did either of them have kids again?
No, they didn't have children. And so I have a stepsister who tragically passed away this year. And I considered her my sister.
Very good.
But neither had further children after.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So 15 to 17, you finished school overseas?
In Vienna.
In Vienna. Where to from here?
And so I then returned back to Australia.
Yep.
And I took a year off university. And in that time, I actually fell pregnant to my first proper boyfriend.
Oh, wow.
And so ultimately I became a single mother shortly after my 21st birthday.
Okay.
But rather than pursuing any form of court or mediation, I walked away.
Yep.
So I literally lost all my financial resources and inheritance that I had for the sake of my son. And then my son's father moved overseas when he was a child. And so, so single mother raising my beautiful son.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it for anything.
Oh, beautiful.
And ultimately, the most important thing for my son was that he would feel loved by both of his parents. And I made myself be very cautious to never to put his father down and to not, having gone through divorce myself as a child. And so I think sometimes the worst things we go through, we can learn from.
Yeah.
And gain wisdom from, and hopefully turn it into something meaningful in our lives and help others.
I'll take my hat off for you for doing that because I asked the question the other day, there's a few, and I guess, why do people do what they do? Is it because, we'll just brainstorm and for example, someone getting abused when they're young, and is that the reason why they end up doing it to someone else? We're just sort of brainstorming, but it's good that you what happened to you as a child, you thought, well, I don't want that to happen to my child, or, you don't want that conflict or...
I think with respect to my father and stepfather, I'm so fortunate in that they're both very gentlemen. And so I was actually commenting the other day, there hasn't been a single time in my life where my father has raised his voice to me, and he's never once put me down. And so I'm really fortunate to have had two fathers as
Yeah.
And my mother is just incredible. Like, I admire her, and she's really sacrificed a lot in her life for me.
Yep.
But I think that ultimately, as adults, we have to reach a point of forgiveness where we have to understand that no one's perfect, and we can either let it go or just choose to love the people closest to us. And that's a pathway that I recommend at the end of the day.
Yeah. So you're 21, you have your first son?
Yes.
Yeah. And you're studying at the time?
So, no, but I studied after my son was about 6 months old.
Okay.
And I'd take him to university with me.
Oh, nice.
So I thought he'd either hate studying or love it. And luckily he loves it. But, and he was a very good baby. He never cried. And he's a beautiful, very calm person, gentle.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And so I was fortunate that I was able to do that. And then I ended up owning 3 businesses.
Oh, wow. Well, what were they, if you don't mind me asking?
So whilst I was at uni, I also owned beauty salon.
Okay, cool.
And I loved that as a single mum. It gave me the flexibility to have quite a good income, but I could still drive my son to school, pick him up. I could still attend all of his events. I had employees.
Yep.
I could go to all of the school meetings and activities.
Yeah, nice. And
so that was good.
And you're studying law at uni?
I was studying law.
Yep.
I was studying a double degree. I ended up just finishing with arts for the sake of, I felt that my studies were impacting my time with my son. And so I graduated with a degree in writing, which came in handy for law. So I love drafting. I've written since uni.
And what's uni like for those listeners, including myself, because I never went to uni? Long?
I loved it. I have a few degrees.
Oh, wow. What do you have?
So I have a Bachelor of Justice, Bachelor of Writing, Bachelor of Law. And then after you finish your law degree, so I'm admitted to the High Court of Australia. So there's a whole process to do with that.
Yep.
And I'm currently doing my practice management certificate so that I can hold a principal's license.
Oh, wow.
And so I've loved uni.
Yeah, right.
I always did. Yeah.
Oh, good on you. Yeah.
I really recommend it. But if I could make any suggestions,
definitely,
it's never too late. And if you have that dream in you, to just do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. And to try to pick something that you really love, like I'd recommend. I just know so many people who studied law, but they didn't pursue litigation or they didn't pursue it. And so just to pick something that you have a real genuine interest in.
I was just about to say that. Would you recommend make sure you pick something that you're passionate about? 'Cause for me,
100%.
If I pick something I'm not passionate about, I don't think I'm going to see it through.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
even if you do, while it's like a lifetime achievement, in my view, it really doesn't mean a whole lot if that's not something you're passionate about.
Right.
It's ultimately a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Something that you would want to do.
You got a few businesses. You got your first son. You're studying. Where are we at now in life? 24, 25?
Yeah.
What's going on here? Where do we go from here?
So I just continued
Studying.
studying and with beauty.
Yep.
I eventually graduated just with a writing degree and just focused on raising my son, focused on running businesses. However, then once my son had gone to university himself, I realized that, I know it sounds ridiculous, but I had a dream that I was dying.
Yeah, right.
And I had faith in God, and I was begging for a chance to finish, that I hadn't become a lawyer.
Yeah, wow.
And I woke up in a panic enrolled the next day, and I completed my law degree in record time. I actually completed it so fast, I had to wait for
No way.
months to graduate.
No way.
Yeah, I was on a mission.
Just bouncing back a bit, have you ever witnessed or been a victim of domestic violence yourself, whether it was growing up or recently or in life in general?
Yeah, so I have experienced a domestic violence relationship.
Yep.
Without going into details, it was significant,
Okay.
extreme. And I feel that I'm fortunate in that I feel that with my clients, I have a greater insight and understanding. A lot of my clients are so traumatized they can struggle to speak. And the fact that I have experienced those things, I find that really helpful. And that my clients often say to me that they do feel safe with me.
Yeah.
I do feel that adults look each other in the eye and they'll test you to see whether you're understanding or whether you really understand what they've been through. And a lot of clients do say to me that they feel safe in
So know you understand.
things that can be very shameful and know that I understand.
Has that played a part in you specializing in, like you being a victim of DV yourself? Did that play a part in you specializing in that area later on in life?
Yes, so I fell into my first job just by way of coincidence that I happened to be at a charity event.
Yep.
And so before even working as a paralegal or a lawyer, I used to involve myself in participating in charity. And it wasn't something I'd ever planned to do, but literally from the first day I was hooked. Left, right and sinker, and that's never changed.
Yeah, okay. How old were you, just going back a bit, when you witnessed DV? When you were a victim of DV, sorry.
So I would have been in my late 20s.
Okay. Yep.
And I was very lucky to come out of that alive.
Okay. How did that end? I mean, you just walked away? Like, is that how you could end it? Did you?
No, unfortunately, I couldn't. I
Yep.
would have to eventually make a police report.
Yep.
And police acted on our behalf.
Okay. In your late 20s at that point, 28, 29, you've got your youngest one who's probably 7, 8, maybe at the time.
He was in school at the time.
School.
And I was really fortunate in that, I'll never forget that, in that I actually appeared in court on my own.
Yeah, wow.
So I came face to face with him.
Yeah, well.
And I observed a lot of things in court that day, and that I didn't feel that they were significant. The actual design of that building is glass.
Wow.
And so out of everyone that day, out of all the stories, mine was by far the worst. But I actually was in a situation where he was taunting me in a court building.
Yeah, okay.
And so fortunately now that particular court has taken great steps to provide greater security to victims to prevent the need to come face to face, including a secret back corridor in court.
Okay.
So that a victim of domestic violence doesn't have to come face to face. They can go in a secret pathway and appear in court with a support worker.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's good to see that those changes have happened. But that's not the same in most magistrates' courts that I've appeared in as a solicitor.
Okay.
Clients will come face to face, which is really bad.
You coming into your 30s? What's going on in life now? You still got your businesses?
Yeah, so I did that, and I was still studying at that time.
Yep.
So, and then I moved back to the Gold Coast and finished my law degree here.
Yep.
And then shortly after I finished my degree, I actually I received employment with a leading firm,
Yeah, nice.
which did specialise in complex parenting and domestic violence.
Yep.
And so from my first day there, I'd really just jumped straight in the deep end, drafting affidavits for Magellan cases, International Hague Convention. And for the first time in my life, I was grateful to see a gift of my father and that those things all come easily to me. So even studying law, that all came very easily, and the complex matters came easily.
Yep.
But it really did still my heart.
Yeah.
And then, so having been in a firm that specialised in predominantly women, I then got to a point where my heart actually shifted equally towards fathers.
Yep.
And then, so in the firm that I'm in now, I've had an opportunity to represent more and more fathers.
Okay. So you said you got into law late. You came back to Gold Coast, and then you finished your degree, like one of many.
Yeah.
And then you started with a firm, jumped in the deep end.
Jumped in the deep.
But it felt natural to you.
It felt completely
Natural. How's life going now? Does the workload change for you? I mean,
so now I'm a senior associate. It's sort of like when you go up a level, you almost feel like you're down the bottom again, so far as
okay.
to sort of run things pretty much on your own.
Yep.
And now I do have the benefit of that I do have 2 assistants.
Okay, that's good.
A paralegal and a junior assisting you. So there's been rewards and challenges along that way with management and so forth.
If you don't mind me asking the terminology, so how does it work? Like, what's a paralegal? Is it the chain of command? Like, how does it?
So, yeah, it is a little bit. I know about your military background. And so one thing that makes me laugh, and I do joke about it, is there's a bit of a similarity.
Is there? I just want to know the structure. Yeah.
So you start off down the bottom, and I used to laugh and refer to myself and my best friend who was admitted at the same, that were plebs.
Yeah, plebs.
So for us
Liz,
plebs, right down the bottom of the barrel, we have to do all of the...
And what's that terminology called? Like, actually, just...
So basically, you're a paralegal.
Paralegal.
Secretary, but you're not necessarily a solicitor.
What's paralegal stand for? Is that short for something?
Yeah, it's basically you're just basically a legal secretary.
Okay. Yep. Yeah.
Not to diminish that role is significant. Like they're our lifeblood. They keep us in check, and we'd be lost without paralegals. Do
you have to do a certain amount of years as a paralegal before you sort of work your way up type thing, or?
So there are courses that people can actually do that.
Yep.
Other people just jump in often when they're young.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fortunate in the firm that I've worked in, that the paralegals that I have got over 20 years experience.
Yeah, okay.
And the other one is actually a lawyer admitted in a different country. So I've got a spectacular team that I'm really grateful for.
Okay, cool. What's up from paralegal?
And so up from paralegal is basically a junior lawyer.
Yep.
So, usually a junior lawyer is a solicitor or a paralegal in training to be admitted by the court.
Okay.
So they might have finished their law degree and they're in the process of getting admitted to court.
Yep.
So your first step would be to admit it on the roll in the Supreme Court. You have to complete your practical legal training. You have to file a whole course of affidavits. You have to be found to be a fit and proper person by the court. That's an excruciating process that a lot of law students undergo.
Yeah.
You have to disclose your parking fines. All of
Oh, really?
Since you've held a license, anything you have to disclose.
What would be something that's significant enough for them to knock you back? Like drink driving? Or?
So anything trouble with the law. So if you've been charged with an offence, like you do have an opportunity to make a case to the Law Society as well.
Even like a public nuisance?
Depends on the extent.
Okay.
It's ultimately up to the Law Society. But you're not told that as a lawyer, and when you're studying, and that's one thing I wish would change, that people start off that long pathway to know whether they might not even be eligible to do court work if they want to do or to be admitted.
It's interesting you say that because I think that we've never talked about this, and there was a guy, I think the story goes, there was a kid that, when I say kid, young 20s, he just finished his law degree or was about to, and I don't know what happened. I've seen the footage of it. He broke into someone's house, and I don't know if he was trying to steal the French bulldog or dog, but he kicked the dog and trashed the house with just drunk. There was no connection to the house, and then they found out who it was, and the person who kicked the dog was tied in with, I don't know, criminal activity, and they went looking for him, and they found out that he was the son of a big law firm. Yeah, and I think a deal got made to not charge him, because if he charged him, he was going to lose the license. But I think exchange of money was made.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was on the Gold Coast. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing. I don't know if I understand now, but a lot of things would have surprised me. Very much got my feet in that ground. You go, oh God.
Yeah.
Matters where I did suspect that there was corruption involved.
Yeah.
On the record of that.
Yeah.
But in my professional world, just every day I think I've seen it all, and then I'll see something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You could write many stories
Write a book
about it, definitely about things that we experience and see. There was a solicitor that had a matter before the Law Society that I read about years ago, who was a practicing solicitor, and she took a sleeping tablet, broke into ex-boyfriend's house, so break and entry, and stole a bag of nails, like actual
hammer and nails.
Yeah. And I think that she was okay just because it was so bizarre.
Yeah, it's a random. Yeah.
But you do see some strange things happen.
Yeah, definitely.
And so we have that continuing obligation to the court. Yeah. And that's ongoing.
All right. How do you? So you're in the law firm now, getting cases. Do you feel like this is me? This is what I've wanted to do. I found my calling. This is like you're enjoying it. I'm sure the workload's up through the roof, but
it is through the roof. But there actually hasn't really been a point in time where I've ever denied this is my calling.
Your purpose.
It's my purpose. Yeah.
I've finally just found my purpose, so I know what it's like.
Yeah, I think once you find that purpose, you're on a train and you can't be stopped.
That's right. Yeah.
There has been one time where I needed a break, where my sister was sick. Yeah. And just like a week or so, just to sort of find my bearings.
Yeah, of course.
But I found within a couple of days, I just couldn't I just couldn't stay away from it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You first start off sort of doing the parenting matters, right?
Yeah.
And then
so DV and complex parenting.
So both at the same time?
Straight in the deep end. And so there are property matters involved as well, but for some reason it always seemed to get magnetized, or they seem to find me there's complex parenting in high-risk DV.
In regards to how are you representing, looking after clients from DV, knowing that you've been through it yourself? Is it does it bring up, is it triggering, does it bring up matters, or is it just more your
strange
connection, strong connection?
It never has actually brought up those memories in any way. I feel like for me, I'm the sort of person that I'll leave things where they are. I'll deal with it this time and then I move forward. And for me, I closed so many years ago. It doesn't have to be at all.
Yeah, okay.
I'm really grateful in that I've been blessed with a strong mind.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, as a writer, my skill and one thing I do love doing is drafting those affidavits.
Yep.
Because I can actually put myself there as though I was there in time, and that doesn't affect me.
That word drains me, just hearing that word.
No, it doesn't at all. Like, I actually visually put myself there.
Yeah.
My goal is actually to put their story to the court, to make who's ever deciding the matter step back in time and decide the truth of either version of events. So I feel if I can draft in a way that will take someone in time as if they're there.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, as an evidence decider, visualize and actually so that they're actually there at that point in time.
Yeah, okay.
But ultimately, and this has been a real issue that I've seen, is I suppose a lot of people who always don't understand the significance of a DV proceeding in family courts. They are so crucial. Like, DV is crucial in family court. And so we do unfortunately have to weigh up the evidence all the time to, Yeah,
I understand.
We're being truthful with the court as well.
I'm going to dive straight in now because this is my opinion. So I'm asking straight to you. I believe there's what you would call a cheat code or instruction manual. And by that, I mean, for example, a news article came out the other night where it was talked about if you go into the family court, you should put a DVO on that person because it's going to help swing momentum your way as soon as you get in there. Now, do you believe there's a lot of people manipulating the DV system to their advantage?
Unfortunately, I've seen that firsthand time and time over. That's the only thing that does personally impact me because my heart is for genuine DV and the time and expense and that has on the system. It's detracting from people who literally have run and fled in fear of their lives, and it actually lessens their voice as well. So unfortunately with law, it can be a very methodological thing, so a checklist of factors to get things over the line and satisfy legislation. And it certainly is to game the system.
Do you have a lot of men that come to you for DV or mainly women or?
Majority it is women, but having said that, some of the male clients I've had have been the most horrific violence that I've actually witnessed.
Have you ever seen or had a male client come in with significant DV and nothing got done about it in regards to court? Hadn't done much about it?
Yeah, the worst one that I saw was not my client. He was the client of the firm and he ended up taking his own lives. And I had a close bond with him as a client, as a friend who was a former Scotland Yard police officer and a very gentle soul. And what I had witnessed and read in his material is I would put it up there as the worst violence that I'd ever seen, to the point where I actually had questions as to the nature of his passing.
Well,
it was a multi-million-dollar property pool.
Well,
multiple trusts and investments, international investments all over the world. And that is a person and matter that I'll never forget.
Yeah, well. Is it hard for you to navigate through your daily role sometimes, knowing that, you've seen some cases where they either didn't get handled or solved well, or knowing that someone's manipulated the system to their advantage? Is it hard for you to sort of...
Well, I'm actually being blessed. I think that it's my faith at the end of the day. I couldn't get through without having faith. And because of that reason, I'm fortunate to have had a very strong winning rate. So I'm fortunate in that regard.
Okay.
I'm also fortunate that I do love to negotiate as well. And so that's what I'll do at every stage with DV. I've had matters settled in procedural hearings. So that's not a platform to make submissions, and I've stood the matter down for negotiations resolved. So I'll fight all the way to the wire to get matters resolved, particularly if I feel that there's been dishonesty there.
Yeah, it's hard for me because when I say hard, I took my ex to DV trial. I appealed it and I got it squashed. And they put a DV on her, which was great, but the cops never charged her, and they never gave me a reason why. So, they did give me a reason. The Coomera police were charging her, then because she was living in the service police station, because she was living in service at the time, they handed it to service police station to charge her, and then this is just where it disappeared. It just went up in smoke, and when I asked them, they said that they had brought her in for questioning. I've got the CCTV footage, I'll put it on my episode, but she dog shots me, kicks and punches me 7 times, and I had my hands up, running away, get away. You can clearly see it in the footage. Now, when I asked the police officer from Service Police Station, he said, "Oh, well, she said that you had started around the corner where there's no CCTV." And I said, "Wait, did you show the footage first?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Wait, I'm not a police officer, but I don't think that's good policing tactics. You've shown her the footage and then you've given her an opportunity to tell her story. Wouldn't you get her story first, then watch the footage and see if it aligns?" And I just, I don't know what happened there. I've got a Uber phone footage of her assaulting me through the Uber and threatening to kill me, threatening I see my daughter again. And she consented, I think that's the word, she consented to the DV, so she accepted it because they showed the footage. There was never any evidence of me. It was just all his allegations, which, I had to go to court for and appealed. And yeah, I got it thrown out. But on that, she was using, correct me if I'm wrong, if you put a DVO on someone, you get this $5,000 payment, right? It's from the government. Yep. And then you go on like a DV payment for every fortnight or something, you get some sort of government DV payment. And then she was using women's legal service, because if you have a DVO or TPO on someone, you're allowed to use women's legal service. I think that's right. And they have a separate funding, right? They're not legal aid. They've got their own separate funding. So she was using pro bono government funded barristers against me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we see that quite regularly.
Yeah.
There are other financial benefits as well with respect to child support as well.
Yeah, how does that work?
That reflects, well, obviously, with child support, that's a different system. It's got nothing to do with the family court. However, sort of factors and calculators are involved in terms of assessing the child support. So if a child's living for a set amount of days with a mother or father, then obviously parent mother can receive a higher level of child support as well.
Yeah.
But there is also that domestic violence scheme as well. I regularly see people try to game the system with respect to
getting the money,
getting grants and so forth. Primarily, in my experience, is to gain an advantage in the parenting court as well. The problem that I find, and this is supported with evidence as well, that there is an academic by the name of Patrick Parkinson.
Yep.
He's considered a leading family law academic. I try to keep myself balanced in who I read, both forefathers.
Yeah, of course.
However, there was something interesting that was noted in an article that I found. It's actually by an Australian writer, Bettina Arndt. He states that surveys of magistrates have revealed to most degree that false allegations of violence have been used to gain an advantage in family law battles. That's why most family law cases now include allegations of violence. Such an allegation often results in good fathers having to pay for supervised contact to see their children, and most end up losing contact. The current system is set up to disadvantage fathers, and the proposed change will make it so much worse. And not to state that I have a view on that, but my concerns is there's been significant amendments changed to the Family Law Act by way of Section 60 CC2. And the first factor there is that the court has to take into account is the safety of the child and people who care for the children. And so as lawyers, when you're drafting material, you automatically go through legislative factors. And my concern is that lawyers will look for risk. That's the first factor. How can they get their client to win? They've got to state some sort of risk. And already we've got a systematic failing with what we call vexatious applications to utilise the system. And so that just, to me, I fear that would be problematic, and it continues to be.
So Bettina and I have been in touch. She's actually coming on next time I'm back.
Right.
Yeah,
Interesting.
she's coming on. And yeah, when you say they're looking for the risk, because I found that when I was in court, correct me if I'm wrong, that's a tactic because they want the judge to lean on caution. Is that the word? Earn towards court.
So you can ask the court to err on the side of caution at a very early stage in family court proceedings.
Yeah.
So if you haven't submitted substantive evidence, then you can ask the court to err on the side of caution where there's risk where you haven't filed sufficient evidence for. The problem is with the children is that can lead to very, very long cases and periods of time where a relationship from a child can be effectively severed. And obviously the people who lose are the children.
That's right.
And it also does detract from very high risk matter. It makes our hurdle higher to get those very genuine high risk across the line. And I'm fortunate in that I'm highly experienced in that area. But we see regular cases of homicide where it isn't.
I don't understand how, like my ex has put, again, the DV got to court and then made up a whole list of allegations, and which had no evidence. It had no evidence, but it was just allegations. And because of allegations, it seems all the files I've had on, it's the same. You got to go do a drug and alcohol test. You got to go do the triple P. You got to go do the circle of security. It's the same repetitive.
Well, that's where you need a highly experienced lawyer. So the first thing that I'll often say is, for me in any matter, the first thing I'll do is go through the evidence. Where's the evidence? And that's the submission I make to the court. There's no evidence whatsoever.
I feel like the judge just didn't care if there was no evidence. Just like, oh, well, there's all these allegations. I'll have to earn on the side of caution or something. But you know what I mean? And it was all off what she said. oh, she said that you're a junkie, so you need to get a drug and alcohol test. Like, well, hold on, where's the evidence? Well, there is none, but it's an allegation. And it's just like, and I remember saying to my lawyer, I said, well, what, shouldn't she get one? And they're like, it doesn't matter if she comes back positive, she'll still take the child home. I'm like, well, how does this work?
The Family Law Act, it's not supposed to be gender-based, but in my view, it absolutely is.
Thank you.
Because you're dealing with real people, and I see bias time and time again. I have seen bias towards mothers, for example, if they've returned a positive hair follicle for isol.
Yep.
And then once the court swayed in that direction, it's very hard to remove that bias. And so I've seen it, but majority of cases I have seen it towards a father. And I think that you're dealing with human beings who are hearing matters. And obviously the statistics are that the rates of homicide are men towards women. And ultimately the problem is under that DV Act, it's just treated like a standard procedure for parents to go through, I find. However, the ultimate intention behind that act is to prevent homicide. And so I'll see cases where people come in saying they've been financially abused when they're professionals.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Well, they've got no right to be there in court. They shouldn't have standing. And so I feel as though I wish there was a greater check and balance from the get-go to actually have standing to appeal. But then you've got the whole point of that act is to prevent homicide, and a lot of women who are absolutely in fear of real risk of homicide don't have their evidence. You know, you don't film or make recordings when someone's trying to kill you. So it's really complicated and challenging.
It's interesting to say because that's what happened that night when my ex attacked me. I thought, well, the only way I'm going to stop this is if I pull out my phone. Because the bystanders, no one was helping. No one's helping the big, heavily tattooed man. So I just pulled out my phone and she stopped. And it was just so crazy because we were only together 2 years. But as soon as that night happened, all of a sudden there's these text messages. I can't believe you used to bash me the last 2 years. And because it never happened, but now she's trying to leave a footprint. I can't believe you used to, you know, torture me at home the last years. Like, it never happened. She just knows that our relationship's over. So that was my argument in court. If I tortured or bashed someone for 2 years, wouldn't there be evidence the last 2 years? There isn't any. It's just from the day we broke up, and then all of a sudden there's these swamp full of messages and allegations.
And so my best advice would be to any of your listeners who aren't quite in court or even in court right now, is that it's extremely important to document all of your evidence. And so anyone who sees a solicitor, that's the first thing they'll tell you. So yes, if you are safe to do so, certainly film that and then back it up to a hard drive to ensure that you don't lose it. Make sure that you don't lose the evidence in your phone. Phones can be broken or lost. Give it to a lawyer if you have one. And if you ever see correspondence like that, always reply, why are you making this up? Are you insane? This never happened. This never happened. Don't just think,
don't just buy
that's
into
a woman.
it.
I'm just going to ignore her. Don't buy into it because, like, you know, you can bet your back on the fact that that's going to be filed in prison, and that's strategic.
Yeah, it is.
So always say that's incorrect or that's untrue. That's a lie, and document your correspondence.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with documenting, which played a big part for me. But at the same time, it's also so taxing. Like I had a gentleman on the other night. He's 4 years in, and he documents everything daily, and everyone at home listening will probably think that's smart, but you actually got to put yourself in his shoes. Imagine doing it every day for 4 years. 4 years, that's taxing, you know.
It's really
sucks the life out of you every day.
Life. And actually, I've seen fathers who it's as though their former, I don't want to use genders, it's actually like being in a prison, and it's prevented them from moving on. It's affected their future relationships that have.
Yeah, I bet.
And it's actually put a hold on their life for those years in court, and they can actually affect their mental health significantly. To document everything. It's a horrible.
It is. It is. How easy? I think the answer is very easy, but how easy is it to get a DVO over the line with no evidence? Just like when I say not charge, just like I'm putting a DVO on you tomorrow, and someone goes down.
It ultimately depends on who's representing you in court.
But before you even get to court, because what happens is some people go to the police station, and say something, and then the police will just rock up to your house. We're serving you with DVO. You need to go to court. But at that point in time, there's a DVO on them, right? So how easy is for someone to go to the cop shop and say XYZ? In your opinion, I mean, I know you're not a police officer, so
Yeah, I certainly can't
comment
on that. I can't really comment in that regard. However, I can say in my experience, I've worked on matters enough that I can't count where I've actually had successful orders dismissed from the point in time and that were made against police. In that, as much as I respect police, there's a significant amount of DV training that's lacking and that is required. And so, oftentimes I sometimes get matters referred to me by police, or I've had to attend police stations on behalf of clients, and no disrespect made, but I've had to gently almost train and say, look, this is the evidence, these are the orders, and had to actually go through regularly over the years, go through body-worn camera footage. And at times I've actually seen, I almost expect at times that a wrong aggrieved and perpetrator has been selected by police. I've gone through body-worn camera footage where in one matter where I've actually heard a person confess multiple times under their breath.
Wow.
And so I had it dismissed at that instance. But that person who was being interviewed by police was actually confessing under their breath, but because police are trained in crime primarily, if they've actually on one track of event and they've got one version of event that they've, decided, they can actually not hear people who are traumatized, or if they're lying, or,
to tunnel vision.
Soft, or it's that tunnel vision factor. And also the lack of training. Police aren't lawyers. They're not experts in the DV law.
Yeah.
And so there's a real issue there. As much as they often try the hardest, they're just not lawyers, and they come from all different backgrounds and training and education.
How do we change this DV process to ensure that allegations are real? Like if someone came down to the police station, someone's gone XYZ, how do we sort of authenticate and go, righto, you got some evidence, or have you got this? How do we put things in process? Like instead of just serving someone with a DVO, say, okay, well, these are the complaints come in. Maybe you guys have to attend court on this. We're going to serve you with some paper to attend court. There's no DVO, but your ex-partner's trying to put a DVO on you. Here's some paperwork to attend court. How are you not served with any DVO? You just need to attend court, and maybe that decision can be made on that day in court. Maybe something like that. Instead of just going bang, DVO, your gun's taken. You got to tell your work. You've been maybe stood down.
Yeah, and so that's right. And ultimately, police doing their job correctly would interview both parties, both the aggrieved and respondents, before doing that. However, there's a lot of discretion in the Act to avoid homicide, and even a court can make an order off papers as well to avoid homicide. But I think that what would really help is funding from the government for police training, which I believe is happening, but I think it needs to be more basic. It needs to be a basic checklist that any police officer can understand, and just have a list of factors, and then require, some sort of guidance that they can follow.
Yeah.
However, there is an issue in that without actually getting private representation, a solicitor who's experienced in DV can easily have that dismissed if it's wanting the evidence. But you might get a duty lawyer in the day it's their first week of court. And then once an order's made, it's a lot harder to get dismissed.
Yeah, because I don't know, are you aware of this what happened to me? I learned this with Australia Border Force. There's a loophole in the immigration system. So if you come to Australia and you're on a tourist, you're not a citizen, you're on a tourist visa, some people jump to a tourist visa to a student visa, which means, you have to be enrolled in a course, studying, can only work 20 hours a week. If you put a DV on someone, you will go to a protection visa. Now, 9 times out of 10, I don't know if that's right. People don't fight the DVO. So they'll just sit on a protection visa for the next 5 years and become a permanent resident. And there are not any restrictions during that protection visa, unless they leave the country, but they can work more than 20 hours a week. And it's so they don't have to be enrolled. They don't have to attend a student course. They just sit on that and they become a permanent resident.
Right.
Yeah. So I was told this when I was ABF. I told my ex at the time when we were together. She said she already knew about it, which is exactly what happened. She went, when we split up, instead of going to the lawyers or to the police, she just went to the DV registry office downstairs, and because she was on a partner visa. Now, she thought that I was trying to get her cancelled, kicked out. Not at all. But she went into defense mode and thought, well, I'm going to put a TP on him straight away. I rocked up to the DV registry office and screamed her life was in danger that day, and they stamped it off. You probably know the judges now. I'll tell you later, but she stamped it off straight away that day. Yeah, on the day. She rocked up to the court on the day. Didn't even have a court case. Didn't even have, wasn't, didn't have her name in that day. But because she screamed that her life was in danger, they steamed her up. They got her in straight away, got it stamped off, and which is one of the grounds is why I got the TP on me thrown out, because procedural fairness. I was never notified. I was never given a chance to defend myself. Just rocked up to court that day. Wasn't even enrolled or whatever it's called, and just got it stamped off.
Yeah, I do see all sorts of horrific things. Actually, one thing happened over the last year with my cousin, and in different states of territory, there's different procedures. And his ex-partner actually was successful in getting an interim order in a territory in Australia, just having gone to a registry. So she literally got it over the counter, which is horrifying to me.
That's crazy.
Yeah, she actually had a finding previously in a previous court of a finding magistrate actually stated in his judgment that she found that she was gaming the system. She then went police shopping, like literally went from police station to police station, and ended up in the same suburb that he lives in.
Wow. I've heard.
So he's been in court for years. It's just dreadful.
I've heard this terminology the other day, cop shopper. So broken father was on. He was actually, the cops actually came and seen him and said, listen, your ex has been coming to us. She's a cop shopper. He said, oh, she's actually cop shopping. And he said, what's that? And he said, the police officer said, well, she's come to us for the DVO, and we said no.
Yeah.
She's gone to a second cop shop. They said no. Went to a third cop shop. They said no. Went to a fourth cop shop. They said no. Then she went to the DV delegate's office. I don't know the sort of correct terminology. Grabbed someone from there. They came back and held her hand, said XYZ, and put a DV on them. But yeah, cop shopper is the terminology I heard. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's right. And then, so ultimately, for example, I would seek a subpoena to the police and in that subpoena seek all the police notes, all of the records, their records of the different various stations, if I can show that that's relevant to a fact and issue, and then provide those police notes to the court in affidavit and have that subpoena returned to court. So that's one avenue we can do as well.
In regards to subpoenas, right, let's just say I worked at some fast food chain, we'll make it up, it's called Skull Burgers.
All right.
Right? I worked at Skull Burgers, and my legal team have subpoenaed Skull Burgers, and your legal team has subpoenaed Skull Burgers for whatever information on me. The subpoena material should be exactly the same, correct?
Absolutely. It should be one document provided to that person. So a subpoena is an order issued by court. So if you don't comply, like there's serious consequences, that is one document returned to the court. And then either parties have a right to inspect. You can inspect it electronically, or sometimes you're allowed to photocopy it, but it should always be an identical report.
This is why I'm very anti-government. In my court case, they subpoenaed a previous organisation I worked for, but they gave them separate material to what I did.
I'll have to look into that record. But
yeah, we'll talk about it after.
It's one bundle of documents.
Yeah.
That both parties have the right to inspect with leave of the court.
Yeah.
And it should be just the one set of documents, multiple documents, but there shouldn't be differing documents.
Yep. Okay. When I leave Southport Courthouse, you'd see the cafe across the road, and I see yeah, is that it? Yeah, the thing. And in there, I see the lawyers, the judges, the barristers, the prosecutors. I'm thinking there must be stuff going on behind the scenes. Like, for example, we'll talk about construction, football. There's stuff that goes behind those curtains. I'm sure there's stuff that goes on behind. Like, people, I swear, people openly talking about other people's cases in there to one another. Like, I'm not putting words in your mouth. These are my words. That made me feel uneasy. That made me feel I don't trust that. What goes on behind
it would make anyone feel uneasy. Obviously, Australia does have a record in particular areas. There was a string of miscarriage of justice cases in Melbourne where there was rife corruption in a period of time. It changed the Evidence Act. It was legislative change. I can't speak to that. However, for myself personally as a lawyer, my paramount duty is to the court and the administrative justice. And so if I have a client that I'm acting for they have a privilege of confidentiality, which means I'm forbidden from discussing that matter with people who aren't directly involved in that case. That would be a serious breach of a solicitor's duty if they were to do that.
Okay. Have you heard much of, and I'm just going through articles that I've looked up, of there's been recent some lawyers that have taken their lives, judges that have taken their lives. I don't know what the background story is, but is that to do with, do you reckon they can't, not when I say handle, maybe the cases they're representing are a little bit too much, or maybe over the years it's all caught up with them?
Yeah, so I had a friend's suicide in the last year that I won't.
But yeah, it's fine. What, a lawyer?
Circles owned a criminal firm.
So they were a lawyer?
Lawyer.
Yeah.
Lawyer. Brilliant lawyer.
Yeah.
Also, I did. No, I had actually appeared before a judge who did take his own life as well. And I think the fact is that we're under, most lawyers that I know, we're perfectionists. So we hold ourselves to a really high standard. And the stress that we see is something that I'm sure it's incomparable from comparing. It's can't imagine what it would be like to serve. But just in a similar way that it would be difficult for you to explain, well, for anyone in life, it's difficult to explain the types of pressures that we're under.
Yeah.
So, for example, in my day, it's normal for me to have people with PTSD scream in my ear day in, day out. And then over the years of, being in court, very, very long working hours, at times we have little sleep. We have to be on at all times.
Yep.
We've got a real grave responsibility. I think that people who do struggle with mental health, it can be greatly challenging. And as lawyers, and particularly if you're, a judge or so forth, there's a very long tradition that we have to be strong at all times. It's that culture where, we don't speak out about our own mental health, or if we're struggling, like that would pretty much could cost you your job.
Yeah.
Because we're thinkers, and if we don't have capacity, be it depression or anxiety, we can't work. Like we're incapacitated. And so there's a real culture of shame that really needs to be addressed. And there are certain organisations which are fabulous to really trying to advocate for solicitors and court members. My father actually established a organisation in the UK for that sole purpose, where he initially was counselling high court judges in Salisbury as criminals, and he started up an organisation where judges, magistrates, so forth, solicitors can very confidentially receive counselling.
Okay.
Without it being on
without it like in media.
Being people able to find that just very confidentially in chambers in court.
Have you heard, and I can't find an article on this, I don't know if it's true or not, it just got passed on to me, there was in the family court up in Brisbane, I think it's a second level, I think, that's, if you look downstairs in the foyer, that main entrance is closed, and I asked someone, why is that entrance, like why, and someone said because someone had jumped off the balcony and killed themselves inside. I can't find any articles on that, but have you heard of that?
I haven't heard of that. And there's a real lack of that in the media for fear of copycats. People doing
that makes sense.
So they do often, police keep that very secret. It's obviously not put in the most usually not put in the paper, and to avoid copycats. Situations.
Have you seen any crazy outbursts in court? You probably can't say because
yes, I've been escorted on a few occasions by security, and I did press security, but court had observed a need of security on my behalf, and I was escorted to my car out of the building, the Federal Circuit Court. I've also been in a dangerous situation in a lift.
Oh wow! At the family court?
At the Magistrates Court, where I was threatened, my boss was threatened, and my client. And we had no way of getting out of the lift, so we had to call out for security. But apart from that, you have to accept it as part of the job that you will be working in danger.
Yeah.
I don't think people can do that unless they're really passionate about it, if that's a calling.
What about, I watch on YouTube, and this is mainly in America, some people have jumped over the tables and tried to attack any of that crazy stuff you've seen?
I've had someone try and kick me in a lift.
Oh wow!
There, but I've seen things that I'll often watch Netflix, and I just can't compare the sort of things that we deal with. Like
it's
just completely mad. I could literally talk to you a week about some of my matters. They're really out there.
Out there. Coming on the family court, what's your, I'll give you my opinion, the ICL I had in my court case, I found was lazy. Didn't get involved, would get CC'd in everything. You know, like,
Yeah.
they get CC'd in everything
Yes.
and nothing happens.
Yes.
My ex was breaching court order. Nothing happens.
I've actually had to file affidavits at times. There are some ICLs that I know that I just hold in the highest regard.
Yeah.
But obviously others in different states and territories, I've actually had to flag it with the court because under the new amendments to the Act, they've got very strict obligations to the court to act in each and every matter, and they have to fulfill their duty. I was in a very serious matter where the ICL had not appeared at all. They literally hadn't done anything. And so I had to gently, I actually called, I won't.
No, it's a go, yeah. Yep.
And just to, give them a heads up before filing that with the court to say, just a heads up on this matter.
Mm-hmm.
The ICL hasn't acted at all. Have you got any reason? The child hasn't seen their father for 2 years.
Oh, that's crazy.
And there's been a contact. And then actually in a matter in court, I can't say the time frame, but over the last couple of weeks, I had an ICL appearing from a different state and territory who literally watched myself and the other solicitor and barrister fight out for 3.5 hours. And I included him in negotiations at all times. And each time I asked for could he provide
nothing.
his input to accelerate the time of money and fees for our clients.
And he said nothing.
He actually said nothing. He said, I have no view.
Then what's the point of your job?
Comment. And then even in court, so he literally can't name him. He's in a different state and territory. However, it was as though he was almost invisible. He just relied on myself and the other side solicitor and barrister to run the matter.
Would you say that because they're incompetent or lazy or just they don't care?
It's a difficult judgment to make. I've seen some who are absolutely adore and they're flawless in their service in your role, and then others who I think just may be a lack of experience, or maybe they just get jaded and are lazy.
How much ICL's on a year, do you reckon?
I
don't know. Okay.
I do think that they make more in a private firm, and there are some, I don't know if I can name, maybe I can name one.
Oh, no, I don't name one.
I won't name
no, what?
But there are a couple of ICLs who literally I hold in the highest regard, and they take, even though they have such a heavy caseload, they are on from the beginning to end, and it's very, very hard work.
So I thought they just all appointed by the court. Can you get a private ICL, can you?
Appointed by the court.
They're all appointed by the court.
Court appointed.
Yeah. So they work for the government, right? Like they're paid by the government if they're appointed by the court?
It's a process to become an ICL. Okay. So some are appointed by the court. Ultimately, they have to have requisite training and so forth. Most are former solicitors.
Yeah, okay.
Have that role as an ICL.
ICL. So I'll give you a perfect example. People are probably sick of me, but saying it, but this is what really grinded my gears. The first family report we had, and I'll get to family report rise if you don't mind. It favoured my ex. It's the only thing in court that went against me. It favoured my ex. She supported my ex relocating to England with my daughter based on all the DV allegations. Now, DV was ongoing at the time. Now, in the conclusion, there's 4 points. I support this. And her last point was, however, if the DV allegations are found to be untrue, then throw this report out. This report means nothing. Right. So I went to DV trial and I won. Got it thrown out. Now, I don't need to be a lawyer to know, okay, we're going to need an updated family report. Told the legal team, they called her, said we need an updated family report because that one was based off DV allegation that hadn't happened. And she said, nah, it's all right. We don't need one. We'll just...
And who said that to you?
The ICL. Not to me, direct to my legal team.
Right.
Now, fast forward 6 months, we get to the day of trial. The day of trial, booked for 2 days. We rock up to trial and they tell me, oh, there's still another hearing going on. I think, well, how can that happen? The court is booked fast. And the way it got told to me is the court system is so backlogged that they double book the days, hoping that the previous case is either going to be pulled or be finished by then because they're just so back trying to catch up. So here we go. I've been given my date and I can't even go in. And then on top of that, the ICL has the audacity to say, I want this adjourned because I want an updated family report. I saw red.
Wow.
Like, you know what I mean?
Did you ultimately get your updated family?
I didn't want to adjourn. My ex didn't even want to adjourn. And the judge's like, oh, okay, we'll get it. So I said, well, I don't want the same report. I'll get a private one this time. And this was a learning curve for me. And he said, no, because you've already seen the same one the first time.
Yeah. And so that's, to me, that's really confusing to me. That makes no logical sense. So what I would have done, are you aware of an application in a proceeding?
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
So at any time you can file what's called an application in proceeding, and you can seek a procedural order and then state your grounds for seeking that procedural order. Also, what I would have done is sought an adjournment of trial and say there's no point in actually going to trial without the benefit of having that updated family report. And so it's really essential that you have a family report that's done if there's a significant change in the recommendations, and yours, yes, because there was no finding of fact to the DV, and that would have crucially changed her recommendations. And so the court, that's key evidence that the court is guided of. And so I certainly don't understand why you didn't have an adjournment sought leading up to trial, and particularly before you go to trial, there's a pre-trial and compliance hearing where you have leave to seek any further procedural order. And so at that point in time, to save money and expense, that's where you would have said, got permission from the ICL, copied the ICL in the other side, and got a joint agreement for the associate seeking adjournment or seeking order for an adjournment of trial.
Well, this is a learning curve, and this is why I'm doing the platform for anyone listening, watching. If there's anyone watching, let's just say in the same scenario as me, they've got a family report, is all based on DV towards your ex, and you've gone to trial and you've squashed the DV and the DVO, and you need to update family report. Don't just take, and the ICL says don't worry about it. You should file a...
Yeah, so when you go to the pre-trial and compliance hearing, seek a procedural order to adjourn the trial subject to a further family report. And try to get an agreement earlier in time. You can avoid even an application proceeding if you can get agreement with the ICL and the other side. And then try and do it that way. Ultimately, you get an application proceeding seeking procedural orders for certain things to occur. So an application and proceeding is like a little mini court within your court matter. And that can be based on procedural or so forth and other things.
Okay. Expensive lesson.
That's a terrible lesson.
That's a terrible lesson.
Terrible.
A good point that I had a father on one time. He said, any advice? He said, be the driver, don't be the passenger. So, for example, me then, instead of me being the passenger and just sort of listening to what my legal team said, or the ICR should have been the driver and gone, no, let's get an updated one now.
That's right. And other things, if your listeners can take this on board as well. I don't think this is just unfair, but in articles that I've read in my experience, each lawyer will propose a panel of 3 if it's a private report.
Private one, yeah.
Be very careful who you pick because it's 100% strategic. And so we will obviously pick
the 3 that
report writers that are likely favourable to our client. And so there are certain family report writers who are experienced in parental alienation, or others that experience in their form of background in certain things. And so be very careful who you pick. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're not happy with your report,
get
clients to file and say, well, they didn't like me. And even a child and say, well, child impact report didn't write me, or I had a bad day, or so forth, and it didn't have a chance to.
I couldn't get over this family report writer had it out for me since day one. Before I even walked in, I rang my lawyer and I knew something was up. But I think, and I've talked about this on many episodes of the process, they sit and watch you for half an hour, then they talk to you for an hour and a half. Now, my ex went on both occasions. So for that, she watched me with my daughter, and then for the hour and a half, all I was doing was answering my ex's allegations. I didn't even get to tell my side of the story or talk about my life and my daughter. She said this, and we ran out of time, and I was still trying to answer more. So I didn't even get my chance. And then the second time we went, I thought it would have made sense to, well, I'll go first. No, same thing. Just concentrate. So that wasn't fair in itself.
And so for any of the listeners reading, make sure before you actually do have that report done, make sure that you have substantial material filed. Don't ever go into a report if your material's deficient. And because that way you can refer them to the material and say, I'm assuming, and they actually state in that report that they've reviewed all of the court file material, and just say it back to them and say, well, if in my affidavit I've explained this already, and then may I have a turn to have you say.
Yeah, good point. And when we were in there, she was asking, is my daughter's high-level autistic, sensory processing daughter, speech delay? And she asked if I speak to specialists. I said, of course I do. She goes, can you prove it? I said, sure. Put out my email, typed in my specialist name, came up 16 emails back and forth. Here, look. And she goes, what, just 16? I was like, what? It didn't matter what I did. She had it out for me. It didn't matter. I could have said, I could have said 126. She would have gone, what, is that all? And I was just like, what I really pissed me off is when I left, when she separated me and my daughter was crying, just being separated from me, crying. And she didn't put that in the report. She didn't put in the report that when she separated me from my daughter, that my daughter was crying.
I've actually viewed reports, family reports, child impact reports, where the report writer has actually attributed certain comments to the wrong parent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we do see some terrible things as well, and comments are left out and so forth.
I'll give you another example. I came up to court one day for the listeners at home. Don't be surprised if this happens to you. And I think this proves how backlogged the system is. We rocked up, had the same judge, rocked up, and I won't say my daughter's name, but obviously she has a female name. But he rocked up and said, oh, yes, you're here fighting. I didn't say fighting, but you guys are here, what should you say fighting over your son, your 1-year-old son named John. No, 1, I have a daughter. 2, that's not her name. 3, that's not even her age. You don't even have a gender right. Then right then, I just slumped my head. I said, today's going to be a waste of time.
And so what you do in that scenario, say, for example, if you're my client, I'd immediately file an affidavit about that.
Yep.
And say, from in your voice, like, by way of update with the court, this is my affidavit of update on such and such a date. I attended this for the purpose of a report. It was confusing to me that these things happened to me in the court, and that it's really important to be honest with the court and state that, put that in an affidavit.
Yeah.
And state, I was concerned that report writer didn't actually know my name. It's risky. It's risky to do that. Yeah. Probably strategically, having contemplated that, I think in that situation, if you're my client, I'd just probably seek a further report and note it within that report to that further family report writer. Say, I attended on this date and this report was made and I was confused because they got the gender of the name of my child wrong. That's probably a more strategic and less offensive way to go about that.
Yeah, I've said that before to viewers. I said if I could turn back time, I would not get a government-appointed family report writer when you're waiting fucking ages. I'd get a private one of your pick 3. You're going to pay for it. But it's crazy. I was told 5 or 6 grand. A lot of the fathers I've had on that said around the same. I had a father from New South Wales say he paid 12 grand. 12 grand.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
12 grand's a lot.
He did say he had to pay for his ex, so maybe that's why. Maybe he's been double stamped. Maybe would that make sense?
That's still on a very.
Maybe it was 6 each. 6 each. What 6-4?
Yeah, it's very expensive. But if you think about it, think of how much money you're spending. You have to be strategic as to where you're going to spend your money. Absolutely, spend your money on getting a highly experienced family report writer.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a gamble because it's taken highly seriously. The court will be guided by that recommendation.
How much weight does an ICL and a family report writer weigh in for the judge?
It has a huge impact on the judge, depending on the amount of evidence that you have in your matter.
ICL and family report writer?
Yeah, so family report writer will have a huge sway in so far as the recommendations, depending what stage you're at. So if you're going to an interim hearing, usually have an interim hearing here in Queensland following some type of report to court, and they'll be guided off that recommendations. It's a high hurdle, and the only way that I can really get around it at that interim hearing stage is by negotiation between the solicitors, if you want to get around outside that recommendation.
There was always these glimpses of hope with me. Like, I remember when the report came in and it was favoured to to my ex, bear in mind I've done everything. Triple P, positive circle of security. The family portrait writer said I had to do the men's behavioural program because of PTSD. Did that. Did 2 drug and alcohol hair follicle tests, passed. Did 5 or 6 random drug and alcohol tests when I was working in the mines, all passed. Got psych reports, no concerns. Doc reports, no concerns. Supervision notes, no. I did everything else. Got everything.
Yeah.
And it was just this family report. And I remember my ex's legal team like, well, look what this says. And I do remember the judge saying this, and this is why I always had this emotional roller coaster. He said, I know what it says, but that doesn't mean that that's the decision I'll make. I remember him saying, he goes, yes, the family report writer recommends the child goes back to the UK, but that doesn't mean that's the decision I'll make. And I thought, okay, well, that's good. He's not just going to go off what that says. I've done everything, gone above and beyond, shown up, never missed a day, got every report. That was just this, in my opinion, she was a feminist, this report writer, because she had it out from day one. And that's always this glimpse of hope, and then she'd breach court order, and then he'd go off it. I'm like, here we go. And then she'd breach it again, and then nothing would happen. And it was just this, up and down. You didn't know what was going to happen. There was many times I walked in the court with my head up, going, this is it. And I've just walked down, head between my knees.
Yeah, it can be just a horrific experience. There's a very high rate. I've actually got a statistic here.
Yeah, cool. Let's get into it.
But
no, take your time.
As I'm really proud of the work that you do in supporting prevention of suicide.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah.
The other day, we're all very proud of you. And
to everyone watching, me. So this episode will probably come out a lot later, but me and a gentleman called Jimmy Judge, he's an eating machine champion. He's here on the Gold Coast at the moment. I got in touch with him through an army mate. He dropped everything he was doing to help me raise awareness. This is the current statistic, which I built off the Bureau statistics, and I think it fluctuates a bit by one person each year, but there's 46 men take their life a week from suicide. So me and Jimmy Judge, we tried to do 46 cheeseburgers in 46 minutes. And I actually thought, I'm a naturally big eater, got a bloodline of Islanders in me, and I eat pretty fast. And not at one point did I think that I was going to beat Jimmy. I was leaning on Jimmy to do all the work, but I definitely thought I was going to get more than 10. And it was actually quite embarrassing. So Jimmy did 20, I did 10. But yeah, sorry, statistic. Let's go.
That's an awful lot. We're really proud of you, our firm, and really proud of the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
So, the statistics that I have from the Australian Institute of Suicide Research and Prevention have it that suicide's the number one killer of Australian men under the age of 44 in Australia. It's the number one killer of Australian men under the age of 44
crazy.
in Australia. It bears repeating. And also that same recent research of the Australian Institute of Suicide Research and Prevention has it as almost half of male suicides in Australia are directly linked to family law issues such as child custody, which is not a term I like to use, but family court matters and pending legal matters.
And I didn't know that stat, that one there specifically, but you just never know until you either look it up or someone tells you,
Yeah, that's right. And so there's a lot of work to be done, and also the statistics are very concerning as well. And I don't feel, and a lot of leading researchers, for example, Patrick Parkinson as well, like he's a leading family law academic, and other professors are stating that, it's highlighting that this policy change and the amendments to the Family Court Act is concerning with respect to parental responsibility. It almost removes references in the Act which encourage meaningful involvement of both parents in relation to children after separation. And the focus, as it has been, but never more, is focused on risk. And so, there are some serious concerns around that with respect to the discussions we've had earlier today.
Because me and my ex split when my daughter was 6 months. Now, just for anyone listening or watching that's maybe about to break up or going to break up, I think the age of the child played a factor towards me. So correct me if I'm wrong. When the child's under the age of 2, it's classed as the nurturing phase with the mother. So they really don't want to separate the child from the mother in the nurturing phase. Is that correct?
Yes, so there's nothing set in stone with that respect, but it is common knowledge that, for example, if a child is nursing, from their mother. If the mother's breastfeeding and they're that nurturing stage, then that certainly is the case.
So this was the tactic that used to me. So my ex stopped breastfeeding at 3 months. Then my daughter was on the bottle. So she'd been on the bottle for 3 months. Now we didn't get to court till 4 months later. So she was 10 months old. Now, as soon as we got back to court, my ex said that she was breastfeeding again. And I know that she just said that on purpose because she didn't want to have me on my daughter. And so obviously they said you can only have her for 1 hour because she was saying she was breastfeeding every 2 hours. I know she was lying, but this is the tactics that we use, against me and can be used against people listening. And I remember before we filed the paperwork, my legal team said, you're probably, well, you didn't say probably, said, you're not going to get a sleepover till after 2. And I was like, what do you mean? This was before we filed paperwork. No allegations had come out. He just said, be prepared that you're not going to get overnight stay. And I said, but why? Because he just said, it's just the way it is, the way they call you. I'm like,
that's right. And so obviously, you don't actually, or obviously the court would support the act of breastfeeding. You can actually, administer breast milk fed by the father.
Yeah.
And my argument in that situation would be often it's extremely important for a child to have that early attachment bond with the father, to have the father actually feed the child as well.
Right.
To actually feed the child a bottle, to dress and to nurse, to form that early bond. That's important as well. So if they're not being realistic with respect to time or overnight time, then that would be what I'd counsel. It's important to find that early bond with the father.
Yeah, I remember the first 12 months after the court started, when they had me in supervision, I had my daughter for 49 hours in that 12 months so 52 weeks in a year, I had my daughter less than 1 hour a week. And the court's supposed to be about what's best for the child and bonding time. Well, I wasn't getting it. She would cancel all the time. Cancel. Those supervision centers, that's what's mentally degraded me and broke me. It triggers me on episodes having to talk about my time there and how I was treated. I'm sure they have their purpose, but I just believe there's so many men there that don't need to be there, but they're being fucked by the system, and don't get me started on how much you have to pay. It was $110 an hour on a Saturday in the hour. Public holiday, $200 an hour just to hold my daughter.
Yeah. Private ones can be up to $600 an hour.
Wow.
And often, for example, at this point of time in the year, it's a 3-month waiting list in some states and territories. And so you have to bear in mind that often parents have already had their children withheld from them prior to having an order made for supervised contact. And then they're going for, a very extensive period of time in which they might have all contact with the child severed. And, that's why when we're looking at these statistics of suicide, it is noted in extensive research the impact that this can have upon, not meaning to be biased, but fathers who have got an extremely close and loving bond with their children. There's extensive research about that, but however, there's significant evidence that our current system is disadvantaged fathers, and the new changes to the legislation are yet to be really tested out.
I think that's a red flag in itself, right? How backlogged our system is. Is it our generation today? Why is it, I look back on most of my friends, all their parents are still together, whereas, it seems like relationship breakdowns are more common these days. Why are they more common these days and not back in the days? Is it because social media is in play? Is it because temptation is always easier via, I don't know, I'm just brainstorming.
That's such an interesting thing that you've touched on. It's something that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
Of course, these are just my own views.
Yeah.
But I feel like society is losing its moral compasses in a way.
Right.
Just with respect to commitment. It doesn't matter if you're in a same-sex relationship or whatever, but I think that we're living in a disposable society and it's a very narcissistic society. For example, for me, I've never had social media. It's not something that I'm interested in.
It's a devil.
Because I just see it as, I feel it in a way, it can be used correctly, but it's quite narcissistic, the idea of people who are married. Do you know what I mean?
Dating apps.
I think that people are just losing the sense of what's right and what's wrong. and also the fact that a duty to a relationship and your commitment to the relationship. We're not talking about risky relationships or whether there's other factors of violence or drug abuse or things which just make a family untenable unless change occurs. But I feel like it is becoming a bit of a disposable society, and we're living in a world where I know from my parents' children that they're not bothering to go to nightclubs, they're just meeting up on dating apps.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Swipe left, swipe right.
And it is swipe left, swipe right, and they're losing that
Connection, building rapport.
Building a foundation in a relationship, and also commitment to sticking things out in difficult times.
Even 18-year-old girls.
And no judgment, and I really don't want any listeners to feel in any way.
No, I don't think they will. But you got 18-year-old girls finish school and they're on OnlyFans.
Yeah.
You know, and
that
it's just,
to me,
what
just fills me with horror.
You know, before it's like, oh, what's your Instagram? Now it's like, oh, what's your OnlyFans? It's just like, what's going on? You know, where were their parents? You know, what you know,
Well, I came from a generation where, I mean, I guess I did live in a bit of a protected environment growing up, in that I went to boarding school in a private school, but we weren't allowed to wear makeup until I was 17 years old. And we were literally like children and teenage bodies. And so I've really struggled as an adult. Sometimes I want to pull young girls aside, and as a mother, just sort of give them a bit, be careful doing those sides, because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's your reputation. You want something they might do that. That's forever on the record, and you might think that's a great idea when you're 17, but that's forever on the record. You might end up wanting to become a doctor. You never know how
it's on the internet.
And you're setting yourself up for incredible exploitation.
And they all have the same excuse. Oh, it's right. So we got privacy agreements. Like, people just screen record.
And then Hollywood stars' children are doing it, but you can't forget that they come from multi-million-dollar families who've got a certain level of protection available.
Yeah.
They're not your everyday person living in suburbia.
What made me think, I watched the Pamela Anderson doco. I can't remember what it's called, but I don't know if you remember, her and Tommy Lee made a sex video on the boat a lot back in the old VHS recorder.
I remember.
Yeah.
That.
This was before internet came out. They just made a private sex tape between them two, put it in the safe at home. Years later, they got robbed. Someone found it. They bribed them, blackmailed them. They didn't pay. They made copies of it, sold it. Yeah. Then internet came out years later. Then it got uploaded to internet. Now, what I took from that was 14 years later or 15, when their sons were in school, guys were like, is this your mum? And then they're showing the video, the mental impact that had on their kids. That's, they're literally, I think these OnlyFans girls, you're killing your kids. And I seen on a podcast, this gentleman said the exact same thing. What's your kids going to think about this? How's it going to affect them? And they always have this dumb answer. It's okay. They can cry on the Ferrari I buy them. It's like, you know what I mean? Like,
I have that concerns, and I'm sure that every single generation before us have had the same fears and concerns about their children.
Yeah.
Going back to my grandparents, the war generation, they would have been horrified by my parents in the 70s, that hippie movement and worrying about their future. For me, since my early 20s, I've been passionate about girls, and I've got a love for women, and that's directly related to my mum. So my mum, even as a child, would attend rallies regularly for women, for pay rises for nurses. She was the organisers of rallies, even though she didn't really need to work. She always role modeled to us the need to be an independent woman and to make a mark in the world, a lifetime. And so it's really awful to me to see that that's what that generation were building towards. And I feel like that unraveling with people like Kardashian and all of these like people who are famous.
I don't even know why they're famous. Why are they famous anyway?
They're on a reality show and they're like, essentially stripping for OnlyFans accounts and then boasting about the millions it's earning. It's a really bad example for our younger generation of women. Like, I'd love to see them aspire to do something more meaningful. Like, beauty is fleeting, but then you're stuck for the rest of your life living with the consequences of public, what they're doing publicly.
Yeah.
And they might regret that.
Yeah. Still got some questions, but have I missed any? I want to make sure I see you've got some notes there. I want to make sure we haven't missed anything, any good points.
Have another conversation.
Yeah, we can do it.
What I'd really love if it would be helpful to your listeners, if there's any questions coming in at another stage, things that would be helpful, I'd love to answer any questions people have.
Because once it gets out there, I can say, I'm going to get Kate back on again. We call it like a debrief or something. And people might have watched it and gone, right, and I can put it on Instagram. Does anyone have any questions? And I can note them all down. But at least this one's gotten out there. And then people will go, oh, what's your recommendation? Or, can you give me any advice or X, Y, Z? So, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, I thought that would be really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of fear, even if they've got a lawyer. I have to remind myself that we're talking a different language. And as lawyers, we have to understand that a lot of people don't understand what on earth we're talking about.
Legal jargon.
So I'm actually doing a diagram over the Christmas holidays just to explain to everyone they can tick off where they're at.
Yeah.
So they understand what it is. I once had a client go to a interim hearing with me, and she actually wrote a speech. I'll never forget it. I almost cried.
Yeah.
Even though I'd explained it to her countless times, she actually thought that she'd have to stand up in court and deliver a speech.
Yeah.
I also met a person who's a non-Australian resident on a visa appear with a duty lawyer at an interim hearing, thinking she was signing a contract, and she lost her children. I got them back again.
Oh, wow.
But she actually thought she was signing a contract.
What is the legal, the duty solicitor say?
She had a need for an interpreter and none was provided.
Okay.
So she thought she was just happily skipping up to court to sign a document, and she lost her daughter.
Yeah, right. Do you feel like there's a lot of fathers being stuffed over in the family court?
I'm not really free.
That's okay.
To comment. However, there's a lot of evidence written by academics who do point to there being a favoritism towards mothers, particularly when we've got a risk-based system under the key factors that a court were required to consider. Previously, those factors were the Section 60cc considerations, and now there's now a new Section 60cc2, which points to risk, and we all know without saying the concerns that we have about what would be happening in the DV court to take benefit of, creating leverage in the family court. And I know a lot of my colleagues will laugh at that and say that's been there forevermore. But now, if, for example, say a junior lawyer might get guidance of an affidavit and just see Section CC2 and have like a little outline of factors they need, that they ought to satisfy. It lends to creativity, and we should have been doing that before. I was trained to do it that way, to highlight risks. But where that's now a prerogative requirement, we're dealing with the legal world here.
I don't know if you've dealt with or if you can comment on, I warn all veterans that when you're in the family court, they'll subpoena your military records straight away because, one, they know you have a psych record as soon as they find you in defence, because once you're in the defence, you do psych all the way through. Whereas my ex, she was from England, we need to know, I didn't know how subpoenas work. I thought we just subpoena her name and we get everything. It's like, no, you need to at least know her GP's name or her medical practice. She refused to give it the whole 3 years. Nothing ever happened. ICL would send emails, she refused. So if you're in the defence, they subpoena your military records. Now, they use my service against me. There was nothing in my records are squeaky clean, my psych records, because, if you ever went to join special forces, you needed good records as well. It wasn't until 2018 I got diagnosed with PTSD. I believe I have PTSD. And I saw a civilian psych, and I mentioned that I had a gambling addiction in 2013. So we're in court in finished this year, 2024. They were using me saying I had a gambling addiction in 2013, which was linked to PTSD, and PTSD against me. Now, I don't see what any of this has anything to do with my daughter. The thing about PTSD is they weaponize it against you. There's this stigma that comes with it. And I continually worked overseas with PTSD, and there was no dramas. But for veterans, and I've had other veterans on, they did the same thing. They just subpoena your military records straight away. Now, they don't hand over everything. they do hand over your SOC records and your medical docs, but I mean, I know for a fact they don't hand over everything, and I like to think that's the army looking after the diggers, but it's not. It's the army looking after themselves. You know, they won't hand over anything deployment-wise, etc. But I don't know, have you ever seen, not be able to comment, if you've represented a veteran, or have you seen veterans get records subpoenaed against them and have them used against them?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned earlier, I have lost a veteran in the last couple of weeks. It's absolutely devastating. And yeah, if everyone could maybe just have a drink of beer,
of course,
today in honor of him, who was a hero in my view, exemplary father, and served our country for several years in the Navy. And yeah, just to say a little silent thought for him and his family.
Bless his soul. Yeah, I'll definitely have a beer tonight. Yeah,
I beg your pardon. He was a hero to his children.
Yeah.
And he'd actually have daddy-daughter dates. And, he'd shown me, films of him taking his daughter out and showing her how a man should treat her when she grows up and to hold a standard. I mean, he was an absolutely beautiful father. Irrespectively, he fought in wars for several years. Just countless wars. He was even present in September 11, Afghanistan.
Wow.
3 years upon years, he trained the Navy SEALs as well, in diving and obviously PTSD, as would anyone who's special forces. And I feel the government do really overutilize special forces and just send them to service repeatedly. However, in no way did that impact his PTSD, ever impact his relationship with his children or his gentle mood.
Yeah. The government thanked you for my service and they use it against me. So, yeah, I don't wear my medals anymore, but that's my decision, yeah. Shall I get on to the conclusion questions? So, for everyone listening, the conclusion questions so far to date are the same. And obviously, they're sort of tailored towards broken fathers, but I have had broken doors on before, and I just thought I might as well keep the questions the same to see what type of answer we can get. Again, they're tailored towards broken fathers, so it might be hard for Kate to answer them. But the first question is, do you have any advice for fathers? Knowing what you know now, would you have changed anything during the court process? Again, a bit hard because you're not a father. Maybe try and answer that as best as you can. Maybe if there was a father watching, I don't know, a bit hard for you to answer that one.
All right. I'd say the most important thing that I say to all of my clients is immediately get access to mental health treatment. You're going to need a team around you. So please get on board with a psychologist, have Lifeline at hand, you can just smash Beyond Blue. They're a free service you can call every time.
Sure.
Just know that you'll just have a realistic understanding that you won't get through unless you've got a good team. For fathers, please record all of your documentation, gather all of your evidence, just keep a diary of any, persons that you might need to subpoena along in the way as well, and just make sure that you've got your evidence at hand. I think it's very hard for fathers because you tend to be protective towards, your partner, or you want to be protective towards your former wife, but just be aware of the reality is just have your ducks in a row.
Yeah, absolutely.
Try and take down fake statements if you have access to, if you're still living.
I have to do that, yeah.
And so that's a horrible process, but also go through all of your records, your photos, evidence of the times you're spending with your daughter.
That's a good point. I had an Instagram, so whenever I had my daughter, I'd put an Insta story on. This might not make sense to you because thing, but I always dedicated to a separate Instagram highlight reel with my daughter. So over the 6 months, all those little Insta stories got compiled into like a 20-minute video. And which I submitted to my family report writer, but she didn't care. I don't even know if she watched it. She claims she did, but I don't think she did.
Yeah. And the other thing that I'd recommend that I do come across with a lot of fathers is that they often feel that they have to follow their solicitor's advice to the letter. Always remember that you are the client and it's your job to give instructions to your solicitor.
Yeah.
And so always remember at any time, if you want to negotiate with the other side, put your instructions in writing. Don't just be led to trial because we're required as solicitor to negotiate at every step of the way. And that's what I try to do. And that I often hit hurdles with other side solicitors is they're just hell-bent on going to trial. You can settle and negotiate any time. so far as you might, for example, you might be able to have if there's allegations of DV, you can have a mediation and engage a child expert to attend a private mediation and try and settle your matter.
Mm.
Always try to settle your matter before you end up going
In court.
in court.
Yeah.
If you're able to.
If you're able to.
Find a very experienced solicitor and make sure that ultimately that your instructions to prevail, unless you're going strictly against the advice of the solicitor. I'm talking about in terms of negotiating settlement.
Yep. Well said. Second one, how do we change the system?
It's a real system overhaul that needs to change.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues with the system in its entirety. And that's definitely not a question that can be answered here right now. However, I think that there needs to, one suggestion that I would really like to see is further training of registrars, magistrates in specialised domestic violence and in the more complex matters.
Have you heard of the Judicial Conduct Committee? I think they have that in America.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's here in Australia, but I think the way I try and explain it is I obviously follow rugby league. I don't know if you follow rugby league, but let's just say all the referees got reviewed at the end of every weekend, all the games, and someone much higher would go, oh, you know what, you made a bad call during that game. It should have been a try, but you ordered no try. We're going to pull you back for a week, suspend you, stand you down, retraining. I think that's something they should have here, someone that's above all the judges and go, let's just review, okay, how did you come to that decision? Well, yeah, no, maybe you should have. Did you check that evidence? This is the conclusion I came to. Can you explain to me how you come to that conclusion? I think everyone should be held accountable.
Well, unfortunately, I have actually, so obviously I'm not a magistrate or a judge, but I have actually witnessed this occurring in the family court, which actually gives me comfort.
Oh.
Without naming, I'm aware of certain,
things,
judges or magistrates who have
got pulled aside,
been pulled aside, and then have received further mentoring. And I know that confidentially. But I think the most important thing that I would love, that I was pleased about that, and also to know that we're forever learning. And whilst people always try and do the best that they can, we're ever making mistakes and always trying to improve. And so I think that I was really happy to see that is occurring in the family court, certainly in Brisbane.
Is that court? Is that someone higher that pulls them aside? Can you mention that? Are they called a certain thing, a committee, or no?
Yeah, and so often it will happen if there has been a complaint made or if an appeal has been made. Like it will have to be drawn to the attention of the court. I'm not really at liberty to say.
That's okay.
In one situation, I was aware of a complaint that was made. And without that particular person being aware, I personally noted that particular, I'll say person, I won't say their position, was mentored, and that when they were about to make a decision, they would step back into changes and actually have discussions with their colleague, and say that pointed to me that they were receiving further training or
Well, okay.
Training. It's just not something that would like to be mentioned, but the court does take those things very seriously.
All right. Well, if anyone's listening and you don't feel like things went your way, they can put a complaint in.
Yeah. So do take action, and because you can actually be a voice for change as well. And as we say, like everyone at the end of the day, most of the time tries to do the best that they can do, but they're only human and they may need further training in certain areas.
Okay. You're on death row in prison. The guard comes and asks you, what do you want for your final meal, drink, and dessert?
It will definitely be a home-cooked meal, probably made by my mother. So I know it sounds ridiculous, but I probably have a roast.
Yeah, roast lamb, roast chicken.
Yeah, I'm vegetarian.
So you're vegetarian.
Roast, and I probably have, some sort of pasta involved as well.
Wait, did you say you're vegetarian? Yeah. So what would you have a roast of though?
Roast vegetables.
Oh, roast vegetables.
Gravy,
okay.
And yeah, I just love.
How long have you been vegetarian for?
For over 12 years.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. What made you change? Just beliefs?
Yeah, I've pretty much been that way my whole life, and that a lot of I've got the biggest family I've ever met, and most of them are landowners, and so I grew up spending
Farmers.
time on farms, and I've become friends with the animals, and so my pet would then, obviously we know it, would end up on the dinner table. And so, yeah.
Yeah, different.
But I was a vegetarian in a time where it wasn't fashionable. It was quite, it was
Okay.
embarrassment at times, but I just
Yeah.
don't like eating it. For dessert, it would probably be tiramisu.
Ooh. What about a drink? Wash it down with.
I don't normally drink, but I'd probably have a margarita if I was on this
Oh, okay. Why not?
Exactly.
This last one, it affects everyone different depending where they're in life, and if you don't have to answer. Some people don't want to answer it. You might not want to, but any message for your child.
Yeah, that actually makes me tear.
Yeah, it gets everyone.
Yeah, so he's just the light of my life, and yeah, and so of course my life changed with him in it, and he's the other half of my heart, and I couldn't be prouder of him.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'd always hoped that above all else that he'd grow up to be a kind man, and he certainly is, and he's a really good character.
Yeah, well said. We'll wrap things up there, but we will definitely have you on again, because I think again the podcast hasn't officially dropped, and we're 10 episodes in now, so that gives time for everyone to be watching episodes, see your background, what you said, and then I can get you back on at a later stage, and then put some questions out there for the listeners and the viewers, and see what they have. I'm sure I'm probably gonna be bombarded, but if you're more than happy to come on, would love to have you come on.
Oh, I'd love to, especially so for us, we've actually just right at the tail end of our court appearances, so it'd be lovely to come back fresh.
Yeah, of course.
So just
Yeah.
honor.
Oh, thank you. Before I wrap up, is there anything? I always let the guests say something if they want to, or sometimes in your position they might want to reach out to you on. I don't think you have any social platforms, but they might want to reach out to you for work or just in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they were to get in contact with you, what's the best way?
Probably be at the moment through my
The law firm, Fedorov?
Through Fedorov Family Law, and then I can provide you my work email.
Perfect. So if anyone wants to get in touch with Kate, Fedorov Family Lawyers, give them a call, and go from there. Well, on behalf of the Broken Fathers podcast, I'd like to thank you for coming on. But more importantly, I think everyone else that's listening and watching is going to thank you more for sharing your experience and your life, where you grew up and how you got to where you are today. And I wish you nothing but the best moving forward, good fortune, good energy, and I look forward to having you on again.
Thank you so much for that, Percy. And also, we're very proud of the work that we do. And we thank you for all the ways that you're helping others, and you're still continuing to serve.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We'll get you back on soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.